Hello, it's John Heaton. Today we're going to be talking about the Bob Dylan album Infidels. This video was inspired by me watching a nice review of Dylan's new album from Mean Mr. Mayo and his nephew. And I too have the new album. I've been listening to it in the car this week and I'm enjoying it. But in that review, Mean Mr. Mayo mentioned that the first Dylan album he got when it came out and went back and listened to it track by track was Infidels, and same for me. I seem to remember, I don't think a group of us sat down and listened to it. We certainly did that with the following album, Empire Burlesque. Three of us, Dave Costello, Dave Bloomfield and myself, went back and listened to that album track by track, and I seem to remember they were busily trying to defend it and I was a little bit disappointed, and still am, by that album. With Infidels, I think it's true to say that we liked it a lot more. I've got some input from Dave Costello, which I'm going to give you in a bit. It got some mixed reviews. Greil Marcus actually retrospectively described it as a bad album that made no sense, didn't hang together. This is the album, by the way. A bad album that made no sense, didn't hang together, had no point and did not need to exist. Which I don't agree with. A rock critic, Bill Wyman, I don't think it's the same as the bass player in the Stones, conceded that the songs are mature and complex, even though melodically they are similar sounding, and the affair as a whole still has echoes of his crackpot Christian days. Over the top. Rolling Stone, in another very extreme review, they quite often seem to either love or hate an album. They gave this album 4.5 stars, I think, and said Infidels is Bob Dylan's best album since the searing Blood on the Tracks 9 years ago. A stunning recovery of the lyric and melodic powers that seem to have all but deserted him. I will concede that, for a start, this is a great cover, and certainly an improvement on the Shot of Love cover. But those Christian albums, for which I've reviewed all of them separately, separate videos, they get slagged off, but I love them, all three of them. There's no way this is the best since Blood on the Tracks. It may be the best since Slow Train Coming, I'll give it that. Although I have a soft spot for a lot of Saved. I think Saving Grace is one of Bob's most affecting ballads. And then Pressing On is very uplifting, joyous gospel number. And then on Shot of Love, Every Grain of Sand isn't just the best song on that album, but it's possibly one of the best songs of Bob's entire career. This album is very nicely produced, with Mark Knopfler at the helm together with Bob, the same duo that masterminded the Slow Train Coming sound back in 1979. And so it's very well produced. I would say it's the best album since Slow Train Coming, as I said, and possibly, not as good as Desire, not as good as Street Legal, and more or less on a par with Shot of Love and Save song-wise, although production-wise, I think this would get the nod. So, what did Dave Costello say about this album? Is Dylan finding his mid-60s Do You, Mr. Jones rage again on Infidels? Good question. What about the title of the album? What is its meaning? Does it mean religiously, infidels, someone who has no faith in anything, or on a personal level, infidelity in relationships, or politically, someone with no morals? Could have multiple meanings, again, as a lot of Bob's stuff does. What else does Dave say? Although not quite a classic, it was a pretty good reboot that made Dylan seem more relevant and energised than he had for some years. Thank you, Dave. This album takes me straight back to Exeter University and when it came out. Late October 1983, and I do remember within a week or so of this album coming out, 3 other albums came out at the same time: Hearts and Bones from Paul Simon, Undercover from the Rolling Stones, and Pipes of Peace from Paul McCartney. And I bought all 4 of them. I can't remember if I bought them on the same day, but within a week or so of each other. And looking back on those 4 albums, I would say this and Hearts and Bones have lasted pretty well, and the other 2 not. Undercover is subpar. Stones save for a couple of tracks, and Pipes and Pieces pretty subpar. McCartney on the whole. So what else do I say about this album? Well, he went on tour with it, and I saw him at Wembley Stadium in the summer of '84, aching hot summer's day, and I went with Dave Bloomfield and Dave Costello, and I seem to remember I managed to lose a pair of trousers during the day at some stage. I do remember Santana came on at the end and guested on a couple of tracks, I can't remember which, with Bob, and Mick Taylor was in the band. And Van Morrison came on and sung It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, which was great to see. So it was a good concert, and they played maybe 3 tracks from this album. I think they played I, License to Kill, probably Joker Man, although I can't remember. Great band. Robbie Shakespeare, Sly Dunbar is the rhythm section, and it's brilliant. Alan Clark, keyboardist from Dire Straits, features, as well as Knopfler on guitar, and Mick Taylor, formerly of the Stones, is also on guitar. Great feel they get, great groove. Actually, Bob also made a couple of videos for this album, which was a first and more or less a last. The early days of MTV this was, and he made a video for Joker Man and for Sweetheart Like You. And also on YouTube you can find, I'm not sure if you call it a video or a performance of License to Kill with Knopfler and Dylan and a couple of others. So another thing to say about this album is the final track selection was left out many songs which were also recorded during the sessions, some of which have surfaced now on the bootleg series and are regarded quite rightly as utter classics, such as Blind Willie McTell, for some reason was recorded and not released on the album. And Foot of Pride is another example of something which would have enhanced this album had it been included, but it missed the cut for some reason. Lord Protect My Child, another very affecting ballad, missed the cut. Tell Me is a nice melodic number. And an early working of called Somebody's Got a Hold of My Heart, which was later to turn up on Empire Burlesque, titled Tight Connection to My Heart. That was also recorded during the sessions, as was a song called Death Is Not the End, which turned up on Down in the Groove, which was quite rightly left off the album. Anyway, what we're left with here is, it's not a disaster, and Clinton Heylin in his book is saying, that this could have been a masterpiece, and as it was a huge missed opportunity. Well, the tracks which were left on here, there's 9 of them, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 8 of them, and they're all pretty decent, couple of exceptions. So a nice picture of Bob on the inner sleeve, and some of his albums there. It's on the CBS label. Starts off with Joker Man, which is definitely a return to the imagery of which Dylan used to be famous for in his lyrics, and it's just stunning. Particularly the verses, just brilliantly sung, brilliant lyrics, just right straight off the bat. Standing on the waters, casting your bread, while the eyes of the idol with the iron head are glowing. Distant ship sailing into the wind, the mist. You were born with a snake in both of your fists while a hurricane was blowing. Freedom, just around the corner for you. But with truth so far off, what good will it do? Just goes on like that, and the video is pretty effective as well. Sweetheart Like You is next, and probably my favourite on the whole album. It's just a brilliant ballad, brilliant lyrics. Favourite would be, and a great tune, favourite would be the last verse. They say patriotism is the last refuge to which a scoundrel clings. Steal a little and they throw you in jail. Steal a lot and they make you king. There's only one step down from here, baby. It's called the land of permanent bliss. What's a sweetheart like you doing in a dump like this? And then in one of the other verses, snap out of it, baby. People are jealous of you. They smile to your face, but behind your back they hiss. It's a sweetheart like you doing in a dump like this. Brilliant song. Doesn't quite maintain that quality. The next song, Neighborhood Bully, which is a song about Israel, and the words are quite are not bad, but it's very repetitive as a song. Doesn't have much variation in it. So one tires of this number pretty quickly, and it's fairly long. I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's over 4 minutes long. Thankfully, the side one closes with License to Kill, which is just back to 10 out of 10 material. The first 2 tracks were 10, and this last track on side one is a 10. Brilliant tune, thought-provoking lyrics. There's a woman on my block. She just sits there as the night grows still. She said, "Who can take away his license to kill?" Talking about man's license to kill. Man is opposed to fair play. He wants it all and he wants it his way. That kind of stuff. There's also a slightly cheesy line about being on the moon or something. Where is it? Man has invented his doom. First step was touching the moon, which doesn't really work. But anyway, other than that, it's a great song. Great end to side one. And as is quite often with albums, side 2 is not as good as side 1. It opens fairly strongly with Man of Peace, good drumming from Sly Dunbar, and but it goes on too long, this track. Fairly interesting words, and good drum breaks in between each verse. Nice production, but it file under fairly forgettable in terms of it's not a Dylan classic. The next song is even worse, and it's my least favourite on the album, Union Sundown, where he's complaining about you can't get anything made in the USA anymore. My shoes are made in Taiwan or something. My car comes from wherever, and the shirt is from Saigon, and the unions have become big businessmen and they've sold the country down the river, that kind of thing. It's not a very good song, and musically it's very dull. He should have left this one off, for sure, in my opinion. I and I is a nice thought-provoking lyric coming next. Not an absolute classic melody-wise, but it holds your attention. Not my favourite on the album, but not bad at all. And then the album closes pretty strongly with Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight, which has some very good words, particularly in the verses, and there's a hilarious bit in the last verse. But it's like I'm stuck inside a painting that's hanging in the Louvre. My throat starts to tickle, my nose itches, but I know that I can't move. I love it. So that finishes the album off very strongly. I was a latecomer when it came to Bob Dylan. I remember hearing him when I was 16 or 17, hearing the Budokan album and not being impressed, and then it took me till when I was maybe 18 or 19 until I discovered him. And then a neighbour lent me a bunch of records, and I got into him pretty quickly after that. I think Slow Train Coming was the first one I heard, and then Infidels, as I say, the first album which I enjoyed hearing when it first came out. He's done some great stuff since. After this particular album, he went through a brilliant fallow period for about 5 years until Oh Mercy. But I've got a soft spot for this album. If I have to rate it, it's totally subjective as usual, but I would give it an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching. See you next time.